It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts, Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome into another episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. That is Alan Saunders. Alan, it's you and I today. No DB. I'm so sick of him feeling like he's got to be like this great dad and husband and go on vacation to Disney every year. It's getting pretty tiring, to be honest with you. But how you doing?
I'm doing good, man. DB's on vacation. Aaron Becker's on vacation.
Yeah.
It's your birthday. You can't even get a day off.
Nope. Unbelievable. I wouldn't have taken it anyway. I wanted to be. This is how I would love to spend my birthday. Quite honest. I don't want this to become like a deep thing, but for anybody that knows me and I speak so openly about like things that I've gone through in the past and stuff, this has been literally podcasting was one of my saving graces when I was in that dark period of my life. And, so I'm so thankful for you and our audience and everything like that has been a big part of pulling me out of that. So there's nowhere else I'd rather be as part of my birthday, Alan.
Yeah. And what did I see about this new podcast you got going on?
The Zachary Smith Show. Yes. Very clever. I know the name for it.
I can't believe you came up with that.
My thinking was literally all my podcasting that I do is about Pittsburgh sports. And there are things such as I'm talking about that I'm passionate about that don't fall into that bucket. And I wanted a home to be able to put them. So I just released my first episode of it today, having one of my best friends on there and just having an open and honest conversation about the mental health, the struggles that we've both gone through coming out the other side of it and where we're at now and how we got to the point that we're at now. We're both here and living our best lives.
Well, I can't wait to check it out. I'm excited about it. So awesome.
Yeah. For anybody else that wants to check that out again, very clever, very hard to find. The Zachary Smith Show, YouTube or all your listening platforms. But Alan, we're not here to discuss that further. We are here to talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers. And we talked obviously yesterday, 2 days ago, going back a little bit about the Jalen Ramsey, Jair Alexander. Is there anything to it? I think that that's an interesting conversation just because from like, a salary cap perspective are these moves that they could make them work, but obviously that might be when they need to start shifting some dollars around depending on how they want to structure the TJ thing as well, when and if that gets done. But I think it's interesting just to like kind of reset where they sit salary cap wise after the Aaron Rodgers contract and look at where they're at and then discuss, okay, following that move, if they go and make a big splash like that at corner, would you consider this being a team that is going all in or just a team that's making some moves where it's like 1 foot in, 1 foot out? I think it's kind of like an all encompassing topic that we want to dive into today.
Yeah. So, let's just talk about the cap. Right now they got 19 million. Going to spend about another 12 to 13 million on stuff that we know is coming. Got to sign a practice squad. Going to have an in-season buff for the last 2 players, injured reserve guys, things of that nature. TJ Watt's extension will likely clear a significant amount of salary cap space, but it can be variable. They can target that to exactly what they need it to be, probably about up to $9 million, assuming he makes about $40 million a year. I expect him to make. So that means they could very comfortably today spend $15 million easily. And when you talk about contracts, the first year is generally a reduced amount. So, it's not crazy or far-fetched for the Steelers to trade for Jonnu Smith, trade for Romeo Doubs, give both those guys new contracts, and still be, talking about a cornerback. Like, they're not going to be limited by their salary cap anytime soon. I always put at the bottom of all my salary cap stories, and you can read the full story at SteelersNow.com, just like some easy ways they can make more cap space. And I have like extend TJ Watt, cut Cordell Patterson, cut Dean Lowry, and restructure the contracts of Alex Highsmith, Pat Freiermuth, Minkah Fitzpatrick, and Cam Hayward. To me, that's not doing anything that hurts either this year or in the future significantly. And that would clear $43 million in cap space.
Yeah.
The Steelers have the second fewest dollars committed beyond this season of any NFL team.
Okay, that's new information. I did not know that.
3 in cap space in 26, 27, 28.
Wow.
So, they can do whatever they want, pretty much. It's pretty clear that they're not what they want is not to get everything they could possibly get this year, right? Like, this is not a place where Omar Khan is pushing all his chips in. When people say the salary cap isn't real, in any given year, they're right. You can do what you want for a year. Like, the Steelers could have signed all 5 of the highest paid free agents this offseason if they wanted to, and made that work under the cap. There would have been an eventual time where they would have had to make some difficult choices for that decision. They did that on a less dramatic scale for a long time. When they had Ben Roethlisberger, they would do things like, restructure contracts over and over again, push out signings, extend years. They dabbled in some void years. But then there gets to a point where you start losing guys that you want to keep. They lose Juju and they lose Javon Hargrave. Those were players the Steelers wanted to keep that they couldn't afford to because they didn't have the cap space. So you can only do that for so long before the cap does become real. Since then, what the Steelers have been doing is, they rolled over money from last year to this year. If they don't sign a wide receiver, they're going to roll over money again. Like, they're far, far away from that. They're at the total opposite end of where they were in 2020 when it comes to how leveraged against the salary cap they are. And really, that is a different and more impactful number, even though it's very difficult to quantify, than how much cap space you have. Like, if you have restructured every contract you can restructure, you've cut every player that you possibly could get away with cutting, and you have $7 million left under the cap, and then you're the Steelers and you functionally have 6, but could do a whole bunch of things that wouldn't hurt you at all to make more. Well, the Steelers are far less leveraged against the cap than that other team is, even though they may actually right now have less cap space. They're nowhere near in terms of like pushing all their chips in the salary cap space.
2 questions kind of off of that to piggyback. The first one, is this a product of, Omar Khan coming from the background that he does and doing business the way that he does, or is it just a product of where the team is at right now in retooling, whatever with the roster? I'll let you answer that one first.
Yeah, I think it's just where the team is. I don't think Omar's going to fret about spending money, nor do I think he's like done some sort of incredible job negotiating contracts, and that's why they have this cap space. I think it's just a function of the team being where it is, and the Steelers exercising some patience on when to push all those buttons. I don't think this is the team to go start trading future draft picks on. In fact, they took a lot of steps and saved a lot of cap space by being less active than they could have been in free agency to make sure they get comp picks. If you're getting comp picks, you're not all in. Like, by definition, if you're getting comp picks, you're not all in.
Yeah.
Because that means that you have held back from your own free agency process to get comp picks, right? An all-in team would have re-signed Najee Harris or, spent all that money that they didn't spend on those free agents somewhere else, restructured a bunch of contracts and gone out and got, a whole bunch of other players. Like, it's just that's not where they are. But that's where they're going. And they're going to go there with a quarterback on a rookie contract by all indications. So, like, I think this ties into the TJ Watt discussion. Like, they will not be harmed in any way by signing TJ Watt to a big contract. Like, that's not going to get in the way of them doing whatever else they want to do anytime soon, if at all ever, probably.
You hear a lot of people talk about, cash over cap. And obviously, if an owner is willing to commit the dollars up front and stuff, that can alleviate a lot of things. Kind of wanted for you to expand upon that and maybe explain what that means to the listeners and viewers, and probably educate me in a way as well. Why is that said, and what exactly does that mean?
So cash spending can allow you to, it's not like straight up circumventing the cap, but it's more like you're pushing, you're taking out an interest-free loan when you do it, right? So like the Eagles are big on this. They sign these contracts to void years. They pay the players up front. They spread out the cap hits over years that don't actually exist in a contract. So, you want to sign a player to a 2-year, $10 million deal. Well, no matter what you do with 2 years, $10 million, I mean, unless the player is willing to take like a really weird split or something, like you got to have at least $5 million in one of those 2 years, right? It just there's no way you can work it where $10 million over two, you got to have 5 and 5 or 6 and 4 or 1 and 9 or 3, whatever. But you got to get the so void years introduce extra years to the contract because when a signing bonus is signed, the signing bonus gets spread out over the length of years of the contract, but the contract will automatically void, meaning the player is going to get cut automatically, basically, and then that will become dead cap hit when that happens. So you take a 2-10 normal structure, 5 and 5. Now you can make it 1-2, and then you have $7 million in dead cap hit that's going to come when the contract voids. And then that can be split out over 2 years. So you have 1-10, 3.5, or 1-2, 3.5, 3.5 instead of 5-5. So not only does that let you cram more under the salary cap this year, but when you're pushing those things into farther and farther future years, the dollars aren't dollars. They're percentages of the cap. And as the cap goes up, that money means less. So the farther in the future you can put the impact of today's cash payment, you're like it's worth more to you.
Yeah, so I guess that's how much of a benefit do you think it is then for like a cash rich owner as opposed to, a Mike Brown?
I think the Steelers have the cash. I don't think they don't. They haven't been doing that because they don't have the cash. I think they haven't been doing that because
I'm just speaking in general, like not necessarily. Yeah.
I mean, if you're a team that can't do it, it hurts. Yeah. Because it's and I honestly think it's one of the things that's held the Bengals back. But I think Mike Brown's a good example. Where like they should be pushing all their chips in right now. Like they should be 100% all in with everything that's going on with that franchise. And last year they were 13th in cash spending. And even given all the contracts they've given out this year, 21st. Yeah. Like, you can't have Joe Burrow and be 21st in cash. Like, you got to be spending money to be pushing cap space into future years and maximizing what you're able to do right now at the expense of the future. Like, that has to be happening if you have Joe Burrow. But it's not happening for the Steelers. Like you can say the Bengals aren't all in, even though they should be, and that's a valid criticism. The Steelers, like, I mean, they don't have their quarterback. They don't have a wide receiver too. They have a very stopgap situation at corner. Their left tackle's relatively unproven. Like, those are the big positions in football, and they're still kind of figuring it out in a lot of ways. This is not necessarily you don't go all in with a pair of sevens. You're just hanging out and seeing if maybe your hand gets better and you catch it straight.
Okay, well, maybe that answers why then, because I was just saying, I think a lot of the fans then respond to be, okay, if you're not all in, what's the point of even going and getting an Aaron Rodgers?
Because, well, I mean, the idea is long-term, you got to find the quarterback. And when you look at the teams that have success in the NFL, I think the roster that you're putting a rookie quarterback onto is a real factor in the success that player is going to have. I do not think it's a coincidence that when you look at quarterbacks that fall in the draft to good teams or quarterbacks that good teams trade up and get, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, Jordan Love, and then compare that to the first overall picks. I don't think that's a coincidence that you are better off with a young player drafted later put on a good team than you are having the number 1 overall pick. And so they don't want to be bad. Everything they've done this offseason has been about eliminating the negatives for playing well this year while still keeping the big picture goals possible for 2026.
Yeah, and the thing that I wanted to ask you about too, kind of expanding upon that, like obviously individual success will bring team success, but I also think like that's just good for morale too. You know what I mean? Like knowing that like guys are going to be catching, like I just think that that's important long term to even say like you're catching passes from Aaron Rodgers for a year for a lot of these guys, and to have a really good individual year to maybe build upon that down the line, even if it's without Aaron Rodgers. I don't know. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, like losing is a cancer, and to cure cancer, you have to you lose, right? No matter what you do to cure cancer, there are other impacts of that cure. You don't just take a pill and you're better, right? You get chemotherapy, you're sick. You got to do surgery. You got to have clean margins, right? You got to cut away some stuff that was working to get rid of the losing, right? So you go in there and you'll lose, and now your cohesiveness decreases. People get angry with one another. People start to check out. People start to let things slip that they shouldn't let slip because they're not as engaged, right? All of the stuff that happens when you lose is hard. You introducing a whole nother series of problems that is a lot harder to fix than where you pick in the draft, which is a relatively simple problem. And the Steelers have, you just trade up and then you move up and then you're there. Like you're not trading people most of the time either. You're just trading draft picks, which don't even, they exist, but like it's not hurting your team. If the Steelers felt like they had to trade their entire draft to go up to get a quarterback, like they don't need that much. They got some money to spend. Like they could do that. I think that would be better than losing to get to the same place in the draft.
Yeah. Good analogy, because there's like the things that coincide with the losing is what I'm more worried about than the losing itself. Like the result, the record of the team. Like what happened that we got to that point where they were losing? Was there some massive devastating injury that's going to impact more than one season? I go back again. I mentioned the word morale in a positive light before, but now on a negative light. Are there now players that we would like to be part of the future that don't want to be part of the future because they're not buying into the vision anymore? Like there's so many things that go hand in hand with the negative result that it's not just the result itself.
Yeah, it's fine to. It's like you can't sim the season. You have to go through the losing to get there, and it's not worth it.
Yeah,
there's no team that's gone through it that thinks it's worth it. There are times when you can exercise the better part of valor and say, we tried really hard, but we have failed. Let's not go win in week 18 and screw ourselves. Like you can do that for sure. Like the Patriots should not have won at the end of last season. They'd be in a lot better shape now than if they had. But like to go into a season with that mentality, I think you really set yourself back.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything more to add to that specifically?
No, I like if you got questions about the salary cap, hit them up. It's a good time of year for me to explain like all the weird details that you're always afraid to ask about. So keep piling those on. We'll get some morning rushes going about those.
Good time for those, and a good time for anything that we need the whiteboard broken out for.
Well, I haven't done that in a while. Yeah. Give me some.
Also, I was laughing at the comments. I literally didn't know what people were talking about until you joined. You got a couple comments about laying on the floor, and I was like, "What are people talking about?" And then I saw the wood paneling behind you, and I was like, okay, that's what they're talking about." So once again, Alan doing a pod. This is actually pretty impressive if you're laying down doing this podcast. But some other comments that I wanted to talk about that aren't necessarily questions. I gotta give a couple shout outs. We talked about it before, that we wanted to know where you guys were watching or listening to the podcast from. We got some answers on that. Jennifer watching in Sheboygan, Wisconsin, checking in. And then we got 3 in a row here from California, different areas though: Sacramento, Torrance, and Petaluma. Is that how that's pronounced? You familiar with that part of California? No. All right. Well, I'm sure that Howard will let us know if I butchered that. but 3 in a row from California. Pretty impressive in the comments there. So appreciate that. It's my favorite thing, learning where you guys are watching or listening to from, because I just think it's so cool how far this thing spans. So continue to let us know where you're watching or listening to the podcast from. There were some other things here in the comments that we wanted to get to and weren't able to yesterday. Justin asked about the wide receiver room, kind of going back to last year and kind of maybe a concern going into this year as well. You know, last year they had Brandon Johnson, Ben Skoranek on the roster. Feels like they would have been better options than what Van Jefferson was producing. Are we worried potentially about having like a Robert Woods situation like that, where he's put into a role where at his age skill set, he'd be propelled into a role that he probably shouldn't have?
Yeah, I don't know. What do you think? I want to hear your thoughts. Like I kind of already given.
So I think right now, with the way that you look at the roster, like it wouldn't surprise me if he is the second receiver in some sets, depending on what they're asking that receiver to do. Like I think that you trust him more as a blocker than Calvin Austin or Roman Wilson. So I think there's certainly going to be times where he is that second receiver on the field, like the Van Jefferson role. Again, looking at the roster right now, I guess my hope still is they're going to add another receiver that can at least bring that to the table. And heck, you know, he mentioned Ben Skoranek in here. He's back on the roster. Maybe they feel like he's better suited to take over that role as that secondary receiver when, you know, that's really what you're asking him to do. So I would say look at the roster right now. I mean, he's, to me, and maybe this is just wishful thinking, I don't think he's going to play anywhere near the snaps of Van Jefferson. But what I'm saying is I do think there's going to be times where there's 2 receivers on the field and he is one of those 2.
Yeah, I think especially when you want to be in like wide splits. I think that like right now, I don't see, if you're lining up in a traditional 11 personnel wide split, or like, how about 2-minute? You know, I think that's, to me, like where you're going to need a player like that, because you look at it and it's like, you really don't want like Roman Wilson all the way out there on the hash. Like that's not what he's built to do. Who is, right? And you get a lot of zone in those situations. So I think that would be better fit for him. So like, I think there's a role, but I agree. I think you might be able to get Van Jefferson's production out of like half the snaps. And I think they'd be okay with that.
Yeah. I think Van Jefferson, you know, credit to him. I appreciate the effort that he brought last year. Seemed like a super likable guy, and all of his teammates loved him and stuff like that. But like played, in my opinion, far more than he should have last year. So, and I think that the league told you how they felt about him as well.
721 snaps left.
Yeah. And it's not like he parlayed those 721 snaps into much production, then earned like some massive
targeted
contract
40 times in 721 snaps.
That's pretty insane, actually. Yeah, that target share. That's I wonder what the lowest target share in the league was last year on like a percent. Like, yeah,
you look that up somewhere? I don't know where you looked that up, but that's.
I could probably find it in the fantasy football
community. Target for route run is somewhere, I think.
Okay, yeah, that would work as well.
Yeah.
Although, I mean, you know, a lot of those snaps, he might not have been running the route though either.
Yeah, he could have been blocking. So, yeah, that's true.
So, but anyway, yeah, I understand the question there, Justin. I can't believe this name's being brought up in 2025, but I saw him throw his hat back in the ring yet again, and I think he's dead serious because he seems to do this every year. But
Antonio Brown's not coming back. We
not him. There's that. I mean, we don't need to talk about why he's in.
I think we can finally put that one to bed.
We don't need to talk about why he's in the news, but there is another Steelers receiver of past that continues to throw his hat in the ring seemingly every single year to come back, and that's Eli Rogers. And Banana Pistol 412 said, and I don't know if this was serious or not, but Calvin Austin or Eli Rogers, who would you take?
I do have like an irrational love of Eli Rogers. He had great energy. For sure. Yeah. But yeah, I think this ship has sailed, sadly.
How old is he? 34, 35? He's got to be, right?
32 years old, Eli Rogers is.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well,
not played football since a stint with the Orlando Guardians of the XFL in 2023 summer. So 2 summers ago. That's not, I mean, here's the thing. If you're going to just mine history for like a wide receiver, just get Tyler Vaughn's. Like that's the one.
guys that are playing football and have been playing football. Who was the name that Dave mentioned from Deion Kane? Still very pro. And he's older.
Tevin Jones is also a lot older, still playing in Canada. I don't think you can sign the Canadian players once they've signed. I think they're stuck there. Because their season goes all the way to like November.
Not like an NHL, KHL thing where you retain.
No, I don't think so. I think once you sign in the CFL, you're stuck. I mean, you could just leave. I don't know. I'm sure there's a way out, but it's not as easy as guys whose UFL championship games this weekend. I think there's like 7 or 8. Did you read the story about the Steelers players playing in the UFL championship game?
Nope. You just told me that the UFL championship was taking place. I had no clue. I don't know.
The Michigan Panthers and the DC Defenders, and we've got a murderer's row of former Steelers here. The Michigan Panthers have 3. Defensive end Rondell Carter, defensive tackle TJ Carter, and kicker BT Potter.
Yes.
And then the DC Defenders have 5. Running back Darius Hagans. I always really liked him. Undrafted guy out of Virginia State. Thought he had some juice. Guard Tykeem Doss, who played tackle for the Steelers last year.
Huge, right? That's the big.
Yeah, gigantic guy. He's now playing guard for DC. Tackle Jared Williams. He had a preseason with the Steelers. He was one of those Andy Weidel former Eagles guys. Cornerback Keandre Thomas, who I honestly have very little recollection of. And kicker Matt McCrane, who played for the Steelers in 2018. Still kicking.
We got a kicker off. We got a Steelers kicker off.
A former Steelers kicker will win the UFL title.
Wow. Okay.
There you go.
All right.
There you go.
Well, 8 former Steelers playing in that championship that I had no clue was happening. Alan, we're gonna do something. We're gonna answer something different here. Bother, for whatever reason, wants to know how we feel about a loaded AFC West and if somebody else is going to come out on the other side of that. After nearly a decade run, do we think the Chiefs will finally be dethroned for their division title? Will Patrick Mahomes enter the playoffs as a wild card for the first time in his career?
No. Next question. No, I don't think the Chiefs.
I want to know. Yeah, I wish Bother would have expanded upon this. Yeah, because I'm wondering, did he ask this question because he thinks so? Is he buying into? I think Denver's going to be worse this year than they were last year.
Agreed. I think the Chargers will be about the same, maybe incrementally better, but probably about the Chargers feel like a wild card team again to me. I think the Raiders
felt as vulnerable as they have.
The Raiders are a very interesting team because I'm a big Pete Carroll guy, and they draft Ashton Genty, and that team's not good. But I can also see them winning a bunch of games too. I don't think they will be. Here's what I'll say: they're not going to be like a 4-13 doormat that is boosting everybody's record this time around. Right? I think they're going to be a competitive team that's in games.
Yeah.
Whether they're winning them or losing them.
I think Patrick Graham's a good defensive coordinator. They got our guy E-Rob.
Super underrated. I love Jack Besh. It's a 2nd-round pick. They just had a Jermaine Pratt to go along with E-Rob. They got Jeremy Chin. That's a couple guys that can really win. I don't know, man. I don't think – I'm not saying I think the Raiders are a playoff team. I just think they're probably going to be 7-10 instead of awful like they have been. And that's going to make that division pretty interesting, I think.
Yeah, and they always seem to get one from Kansas City, or at least play them very tough every single year. Maybe they play them tough both times. Now, because I think they're going to play everybody tough. We'll see how much of a difference it actually makes in the results. I'm still picking Kansas City to win. They didn't have Rashee Rice for most of last year, and I think that really impacted them. I don't necessarily think Travis Kelce's going to look any better. Looks like he's certainly on the downswing, but Kansas City looked as vulnerable as they ever have last year. Well, I shouldn't say ever, in the Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid era, and look where they got to, lost in the Super Bowl. So, if they're, I was
actually just watching. Ryan Clark had Jack Jones on the Pivot about him intercepting Patrick Mahomes on Christmas Day and like staring him down on his way to the end zone. The Raiders win that game, and that feels like 3 Raiders teams ago. Like nobody on that team is still on that team.
Mm-hmm. And then in regards to shout outs, Alan, we had missed a couple, but you went back and were able to find them. I saw a comment here from @CrossTrain was their name on YouTube, and they said that they had subscribed on the 4th of June, which would have been during the sale, obviously, and didn't get a shout out. So there was some mix up there. Like, so they were a resubscriber, correct? Like they had already had SN Plus
so
and
previously. So I didn't. Yeah, it was probably on me.
But anyways, shout out to we got some shout outs down there for Theodore Dishman, who we found out, we don't want to give away his alias, but you're out there. We know who you are now. Tyler Hurley, our guy.
Got another one just came in today too, so we'll have some more for tomorrow. For Monday.
There we go. And then Dave, who is.
I also wanted to just. You were talking about the viewers and where people are from. I kind of wanted to just I get the addresses from the subscribers. They're from all over, man. Like it's incredible. Just like in the last 5 orders, it's like Texas, Oklahoma, South Carolina, Ohio, California, Florida, Kansas, Kentucky, Arizona. It's incredible where and how spread out our audience really is. It's really cool. I think everyone thinks they're the only out of town person listening, and it's probably like the opposite.
Yeah. I may have overshot when I first asked this because you were telling me about this, and I was like, oh, we got to have one in every state, right? But that's not the case yet. But that's that's what I want to have happen. So we need at least one in every state. And obviously want to expand beyond that. We want different countries in there. We know when you guys are listening or watching different countries, you'll put those in the comments too. But please continue to share where you're watching or listening to this podcast from. If you're subscribing, we'll obviously see it and shout you out for that as well. But definitely appreciate the audience, like I said at the beginning, for very different reasons talking about it, but appreciate anybody that watches or listens to the show and takes any time out of their day to support us.
Yeah, we really we appreciate all the love, and we got to get DB back from vacation so we can get our subs only live stream scheduled for next week. But hoping that's going to be next week.
Absolutely. Well, Alan, this has been a lot of fun. We got a weekend ahead of us, so until Monday, tell the people they can find you.
Saunders _PGH on X, Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky. PGH Steelers Now sites account, SteelersNow.com. Go there, sign up for SN Plus. It is still cheap, even though it's not on our crazy sale anymore, but less than $4 a month if you get it annually. Just a little bit more if you don't. And all the best stuff from me, DB, the rest of the Steelers Now team, ad-free reading over there at Steelers Now and our subs-only live stream. Definitely want to check that out. And, of course, everybody can subscribe, and hit that bell for notifications here on the YouTube platform. That's totally free. Helps us grow this channel. We got a whole bunch of stuff out there from OTAs and minicamp. Probably going to be rattling off a whole bunch of it as we go on through the weeks here. So definitely don't want to miss a thing there. 15,000. We are so close to 16,000. 15,900. And Tevin Jones, we brought him up earlier for his playing the CFL. 14. There it goes.
When you replace one of the most talented Steelers of all time, you better be a great player. So I got to give a shout out to Montana Lamonius Craig, who came in and took 14
for 3 days. And then
and also Kenny, as I say, Kenny G rocking number 14 now in all seriousness. But I wanted to give Montana Lamonius Craig a shout out for a question that we got asked about people to watch in training camp, and Alan stole my thunder on that one, so I had to figure out a way to say his name this week still. So there we go. Shout out to Montana. Looking forward to watching him in training camp in the preseason. But appreciate everybody watching and listening to this. Let us know your favorite 14 in Steelers history. I have a feeling that it was not one of the names that we mentioned right there. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, hit us in the comments with that. Your thoughts, anything that we talked about today, question for a future episode, all that good stuff. Leave us a 5-star review. Subscribe if you're listening somewhere else, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts from. Just search Steelers Afternoon Drive. Do the same thing over on TikTok, and then you'll find me everywhere, Zachary Smith, PGH. For Alan Saunders and myself, thanks for jumping in. Take another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.